So when it comes to Decidr, really what our focus is to bring small businesses into the era of AI. One of the things that people look to when they think about AI is somewhat of fear, but we take a different approach. We're an opportunity-first business when it comes to Decidr, and we really think that we can bring amazing technology to SMEs who, let's face it, when it came to coming online, they barely made it. SMEs make up more than 90% of any kind of developed economy, and we think that there is tremendous opportunity to focus on the little companies as opposed to what all other AI companies do, which is focus on the enterprise. And the closest X for Y that you can kind of think about Decidr is a business called Palantir, and likely you've heard of it. It's listed on the stock market in the United States, and similar to Palantir, at Decidr, we have focused on what an agentic business looks like. And importantly, for everyone who's listening in on the call today and looking in on this presentation, the big mental leap that we ask and that we think about at Decidr is that this amazing and remarkable technology that we have in front of us called artificial intelligence is to be used in a new category. So just like offline businesses or retail businesses move to online, and that was a different category, we believe that there is a new category called Agentic Commerce, and it is different from e-commerce. And so, Harmony, if you just move to the next slide, please. In terms of group structure, as I have mentioned earlier, that upon the successful approval of the resolutions by the board, Decidr AI Industries will own 100% of Decidr AI. We also own 100% of e-commerce business Edible Beauty. And in June of this year, we sold the business 13Cs, which was an artifact business within the group prior to our transformation. Harmony, if you go to the next slide, please. In terms of timeline and activities, as I mentioned with Mr. Main's earlier question, we've been a very active board and a very active business over the last 12 months. When we were LV1 at that time and Ms. Fielding and Mr. Bunter joined me on the board, we saw a tremendous opportunity with our partial ownership of Decidr AI at that point in time to apply this remarkable technology into, at that time, the LV1 business. That really began our transformation as a company. We saw the remarkable outcomes of the Decidr technology within the Edible Beauty business, and we realized that this technology was not only portable into the group, but also could be utilized by any business and provided a really remarkable but different way of using this amazing technology. I like to say that where we are today is we're in the BlackBerry era of AI. There's been, back in BlackBerry, and, I went to University of Western Ontario, which was not far away from Waterloo, where BlackBerry was invented. But that was ushered in, the BlackBerry way was ushered in by tremendous investment in telecom networks. And BlackBerry found a way to get cheap data and emails and text messages via their devices. That was a smartphone with a keyboard. But it wasn't until a few years later where a guy in a black turtleneck said that there's something better than a stylus. It's our finger and it's a single pane of glass. But the secret, what we believe, to the iPhone success was not the iPhone's hardware or beauty or marketing. It was the closed system of the App Store, which propagated enormous amounts of app and functionality into this amazing device. And that's really what we're focused on, Decidr. We think that the world is about to use this AI in a new way, and it's a different way than the BlackBerry. But just going back to our particular milestones in the group, we've had a very active board and both corporate and management activities within the two streams of the business. And there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be improved upon as we kind of go through and continue to grow and to learn as a company. But I'd like to say thank you to the board and to the management team. I felt like everyone's worked really hard over the past financial year to deliver and execute and take advantage and start to commercialize this amazing opportunity. Harmony, if you just progress to the next slide, please. When it comes to our vision at Decidr, we see this over a 4-horizon model. Really, it's focusing on AI process autonomy, which is where we're at now. And those are the stateless apps that we put into our partners, but as well moving towards what we call the agentic graph or the agentic economy. And we think that this is a tremendous opportunity for sovereign nations to be able to, powered by their SMEs, to be able to unlock this amazing technology. And the secret to artificial intelligence, is what we believe, is not to have a decentralized approach. We don't want a Google Play Store. We want an Apple App Store. And it's the beauty of the Apple App Store, which provides the interoperability of this amazing AI, and it eliminates much of the plumbing and inference issues that exist today as businesses try and jam this inhuman technology into very human businesses. Harmony, if you'd just like to move to the next slide, please. What's really interesting is you can look to the past to predict the future. And, I mentioned earlier that what we believe at Decidr is there's this new thing called the agentic economy. But if we look back to the bricks and mortar and to the e-commerce growth and transformations that happen, there's always infrastructure winners, hardware winners, and software winners. And it's the software winners that take all the profit from that wave of transformation. And so if we look back to bricks and mortar, back in the day in Canada, the Simon Group was the largest owner of malls in North America. IBM owned all the cash registers, but it was SAP and Oracle and the ERP systems that took all the profit. Go into online, AWS ushered in cloud, but Steve Jobs and the team at Apple created not only the iPhone, but as I mentioned before, the apps and the content exploded the amount of content. And when there was an explosion of content, you had to find a way to find it. And thus Google took the majority of the profits and became the company that's created the most profit of any business in humankind. Now, if we kind of move forward into the agentic future, we have NVIDIA, the infrastructure winner. OpenAI, the infrastructure winner. You have NVIDIA, the hardware winner. And typically, in both of the previous revolutions or evolutions, is that when the hardware and infrastructure winner hit a tipping point, that's when the software provider emerges. And we believe that is Decidr. And we believe that is our ability to create the new agentic ecosystem, the new agentic layer that sits on top of the internet. And it's what's called Agentic Commerce. Harmony, if you could just move to the next slide, please. Now, where the world is, I'd like to do a little bit of framing here. All of us have used ChatGPT at one point. That's the generalist chat on my left there. And generalist chat is pretty remarkable, right? But what most people don't understand is that these large language models, they fundamentally do not understand what we are asking of them. They are pure probability machines. And what they do is every word that you put into that text box into ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or any of the over 180 different models and large language models, what it does is it sends that token or that word through the cloud to a Blackwell chip in NVIDIA, and it looks across, in OpenAI's case, 20 trillion tokens. And think of a token as a word. And it does that for every single word, and all it does is it finds the word that has the highest probability to give you back. And so it's a pure horsepower game. And that's why NVIDIA is worth so much money. But fundamentally, they don't understand what you're doing. And at my time at Appen in a previous role, fine-tuning these models is the next logical step. So you have expert chat, right? And then you have where we are today, which is AI agents. And as I kind of tongue-in-cheek say that, if you go on YouTube, any YouTuber could tell you can build an AI agent in 30 minutes or less. That is true, but those AI agents will not work in any enterprise business application. And I'm going to tell you why in a moment. But very quickly, we're moving on to kind of the next era, which is called agentic apps or agentic agents. So don't be surprised that over the next 3 to 4 months that every major SaaS provider will now have an AI agent platform. Platform will become the word du jour over the next 4 months. But all of those will be AI agents. They will not be agentic agents. And Harmony, if you just move to the next slide. And importantly, what's the difference between an AI agent and an agentic agent? So an AI agent, and this exists in OpenAI's Agent Kit, in Claude, and all of those other ones. An AI agent is task-based. So book me a flight to Paris. And they can do that pretty well. However, the world will quickly move, and AI agents will go the way of Neanderthals and will move into agentic agents or agentic apps. Now, agentic apps, you give them a goal. You do not give them a task. So AI agents, book me a flight to Paris. Agentic apps, find me a holiday my family will love. Now, that agentic app may go, well, how do I achieve that goal? It may go to your Instagram feed, use a large vision model to look at whether or not you like ski holidays or beach holidays. It may look up your job title on LinkedIn. It may reference that against a salary database, and it may then see how much you could afford. And it may ask you questions about what books you like to read or what you like to go water skiing or something like that. And it will then, instead of booking you a flight to Paris, it may recommend a holiday in Nice in the south of France. And so this is the difference. Agentic agents are given the agency to be able to go find and solve the goals that they have. Harmony, if you just move to the next slide, please. And so Decidr agents are truly agentic. This is it's a flat screen, but if anyone would like to go to ediblebeauty.com, you can actually interact with what Edible Beauty calls as Ava. And really what's remarkable about Ava is powered by the Decidr operating system. Underneath, within Edible Beauty, their procurement systems, their accounting systems, their advertising systems, their customer relationship management systems, and their product systems are all connected in the Decidr operating system. And the Decidr operating system is a structure of a new agentic business, and it is agentic, meaning that it can take all of that disparate data and it pulls it together into a centralized, AI-managed database. And on top of that, you have a series of agentic apps. And one of those, Edible Beauty calls Ava, which is quite remarkable. And when we deployed Ava, and it was one of our first deployments within the technology, we found that within the first 8 weeks, it grew incremental revenue by nearly 4% for the business. And after 12 weeks, it grew incremental revenue by nearly 10% for the business. And it did that not just because it was omnipotent. It had some remarkable technology and abilities. It went out and created new agents to be able to go look at all of Edible Beauty's competitors, pull that information into the Edible Beauty database, and could provide extremely nuanced results for customers who are interacting with this particular agent. But in addition to that, it was available 24 hours a day. It can speak multiple languages. It knew and spoke just like the founder of the business did. And that nuanced and highly capable agent and agentic ability allowed this particular app to convert, and still does, 10 times higher than the typical website. And so, when you compare that to the AI agents, and those are the screenshots that I put on the right there, that's from Sephora, from Mecca, from Adore Beauty and Juralique. These are all the Australian domestic champions. Those are all AI agents. So they're all orchestration platforms. And one of the questions I love to ask, and I would encourage everyone to, when you're interacting with these new chatbots to really see if they're agentic, is to ask the question, what is your best product? What is your best product could mean customer service, it could mean price, it could be margin. It's a very hard question to ask a database. So when you ask that question of a Decidr agentic agent, it will give you an incredibly nuanced result. But in all 4 of those instances, when you ask the question, what is your best product? Because they are AI agents, they fail and they push you to customer service, because that's a question that is very difficult to orchestrate. And so this is the difference between what the world will be going into when it comes to agentic capabilities. Harmony, if you just move to the next slide, please. And as a result, AI is very hard. I spent 12 years in AI building some of the most, being a part of building some of the largest LLMs in the world and vision models in the world. I don't want to claim too much on that. I participated in it for the audience. But really, there's a stat from MIT that 95% of these AI pilots and generative pilots fail. Now, there's a really good reason on why they fail. And if Harmony, you go to the next slide, is really going back to how I explained how these large language models work. They are a probabilistic technology, and we are trying to put a probabilistic technology into a deterministic business. These things are called super guessers. And for everyone listening in today, everything coming out of a large language model is a hallucination. They are super guessers. It's the degree of hallucination. And in a business, you need your workflows completed the same way every single time. And so there is a fundamental issue. And at Decidr, that's how we're thinking differently. So instead of trying to put probabilistic technology into a deterministic business, what we've done is we've re-architected and we've reimagined and thought about what does an agentic business look like. And when you redesign it from the bottom up, then you can decide where humans go, where AI goes. But because it's designed, and if you can think about Decidr as a business that manufactures agentic companies, every agentic company that comes out of our manufacturing line is exactly the same. They're standardized, just like the Apple App Store. And so, Harmony, if you move to the next slide, please. And this eliminates there are 3 fundamental reasons why these generative pilots fail. Reason number 1 is a reliability issue. If you have a 20-step workflow, and each step in your workflow has 95% reliability, after 20 steps, that means you're at 36% reliable. And you cannot have 6 out of 10 bank reconciliations not incorrect. Secondly, within that is that there are even research areas from OpenAI at universities, at Anthropic, which are trying to understand how these neural nets actually work. Importantly, we do not understand how these LLMs get their answers. And so there's an explainability issue. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is token subsidization. For everyone on the call and in person here, if you think about Uber 10 years ago, was far less expensive than it is today. And that's because it was subsidized by venture capital, and venture capital subsidized it so that we would download the app, we would decimate the taxi industry, and we would build the habit of starting to use these models. So think about today. ChatGPT is extremely cheap. It is losing money at a billions of dollars rate. And if you think about ChatGPT or Anthropic and you get a prompt, it will always ask you what you want to do next. That is training us to continue to use these apps within our daily lives. And in my direct experience, that even an economic improvement of between 3 and 5 times of these models will still be less than the subsidy that venture capital is putting on top of it. So there are thousands of generative AI point solutions out there whose business models won't work. And lastly, when it comes to economics, just like when you're using ChatGPT, it has to remember what you said to it the last time to make your response this time better. That's what's called prompt chaining. And what that means is if you have memory, and you'll see ChatGPT when it says thinking, what it's doing is going through its memory, and that's consuming tokens. And that is a quadratic increase. So if you have 10 tokens in step 1 and 10 tokens in step 2, you have 10 tokens used in step 1 and 20 tokens used in step 2, so on and so forth. So in many cases, the AI, the generative AI that you're exposed to in your SaaS applications and in third-party and startups, in some cases may be cheaper to actually get humans to do that because of the earlier two kind of economic reasons for it. So fundamentally, there are some big issues which come with generative AI and putting it into deterministic systems. And so Harmony, if you move to the next slide, excuse me. And so that's all of our choices today. Really, all we have from small business and big business is the SaaS tools that are in front of us, and kind of choose your SaaS tool, and they will have a weirdly named agent that will do some generative stuff for you. But as I like to say, with Salesforce as an example, it has its agent called Einstein. So Einstein may help you write a better email to your top customer, but it does not know if that top customer is a poor payer because it's not connected to your accounting system. And so that's the only choice that we have today. But at Decidr, we offer something different going into the design of our schema. And if Harmony, if you move to the next slide, please, is that really where Decidr works in is we are a horizontal platform, and we are a horizontal agentic platform. So if you look at the bottom left there, you have Salesforce, ServiceNow. These are all the companies that will very quickly go and say they have multi-agent platforms on there. Be warned, those are generative multi-agent platforms and require tremendous amounts of orchestration and will consume tremendous amounts of tokens, or what's called inference. But where Decidr is moving to is a horizontal application. And why is horizontal important? Well, I'd like to point out, when we use ChatGPT, the bigger the prompt, the better the result. AI is fundamentally a horizontal technology. So Decidr provides the infrastructure to bring in all the context of your data, from your accounting system to your sales and marketing tools, and brings that into a central tool to give it a schema, to give it purpose and understanding and structure. And we believe that's the secret, which actually eliminates those problems that I mentioned before. So Harmony, if you just go to the next slide. And the secret to our technology is our proprietary schema. So I would encourage anyone who's listening on the call to take a look at Palantir. They call it their ontology. And so Palantir is fundamentally a data integration company, as they'll tell you. But instead of going through decades-long integrations and data migrations that cost, in this case with the US federal government, taxpayers, billions of dollars, what Palantir has said is before we do that, let's understand what the flow of data should be between government departments. Let's design the plumbing or the railroad tracks from the very beginning, and then let's decide what data we actually need, because much of it we don't. And Palantir has, in the early days, they were really shredded by the market for doing this, but it's proven to be a very successful outcome. And at Decidr, we operate in a similar way. What we've said is, well, there's going to be this new thing called an agentic economy. And in the agentic economy, there'll be a thing called an agentic business. And it looks different from a digital business, and it looks different again from a retail business. And what we've done is we've designed this business from the bottom up. We call it a schema. You could call it a blueprint of a business, and it contains an entire business, all the executive functions. And if you think about an SME who barely made it online, they will get the power of a multinational structure. We have procurement, marketing, governance, compliance, trust and safety, all of these executive functions that a small business would never have. And that is designed from the bottom up with goals, because this is an agentic business, meaning it's goal seeking, and it will issue strategies and deploy strategies with human oversight to be able to achieve the goals that you set for it. So for the first time, businesses won't have to hang on by their fingernails. They'll be asked the question, what are your goals and aspirations? And it's those goals and aspirations where we think, like today, no one opens the bonnet or the hood of their car to look at whether the engine is running. We believe that between 50 and 60% of all the functions that we do in a business today will be eliminated. And that will be done by agentic businesses like Decidr. And so our schema has tremendous lock-in ability. It has tremendous scalability because it's networked, and it has tremendous defensibility because it is the standard. And why we did this capital raise, from Mr. Main's earlier question around the strategic importance and the imperative behind it, is that when we look back into the past, there is only one social graph, and that is owned by Meta. And there's only one search graph, and that is owned by Google. And there will only be one agentic graph or agentic network, and we want that to be owned by Decidr. And the really exciting opportunity, just like Google had in front of it when they indexed the entire web, we already know every single business in this country and in the Western world. They're registered. They have websites, and our system can go and find them and pre-board them, which is what I mentioned in our chairman's address. So Harmony, if you just move to the next slide. And so we've done this, and we've made it really easy for businesses to, we will be making businesses to be able to start their agentic journey. And we do that because we're pre-creating their agentic businesses. We're a company that manufactures agentic companies, and we're spinning up our factory, and we're starting to build these agentic companies in what we call the agentic graph or the agentic network. And our system has some really unique technology to go out onto the public web to run observations of that technology, of that information. And what we do is we take that information and we overlay it onto our standard business schema. And so small businesses will find their agentic business via an LLM, via search, or just like Facebook, you get added as a friend on Facebook, a vendor or a prospect will ask to connect to them from their activated agentic business. They'll be able to claim their agentic business for free. They'll be able to add and sync their most common SaaS tools. And we have dozens of connectors that will allow them to do that. And what's amazing about our agentic business is that it contains all the workflows already for any given business. And through the years that we were doing that research and development for Decidr, we realized that 80% of the workflows in any business, whether it be a big enterprise or a small business, are the same. When you eliminate the products and services and you take away the SaaS tools, businesses search for prospects, onboard customers, run bank reconciliations, run projects, et cetera, et cetera. And those are the apps, the agentic apps, which sit in the Decidr platform. And similar to when Steve Jobs pulled out the first iPhone and had 8 apps on it, those were the iPhone apps, right? And just like the iPhone and the App Store, Decidr also has an agentic app store. And those are the businesses that create and customize their agentic apps in their businesses. And so Decidr also has a massive network effect within our technology, because there is going to be an accountant out there who's going to take our vanilla bank reconciliation app and they will customize it in their special way. That can be sold and installed in any of the agentic businesses in our network. And what's amazing about that, if you think about an agentic app like a human, it takes time to onboard a human or an employee into your organization. With an agentic app, as soon as it's installed, it has the entire context of the business. And it's agentic, so it can see everything and has perfect memory. And so instantly you can get the capability and that je ne sais quoi that comes from that accountant and their special way of doing something that can power your business to more prosperity or more savings. So if you move to the next slide, Harmony. And so the results that we have so far are pretty encouraging. You know, I talked about Edible Beauty and that Ava app. It's still quite remarkable. We see the stats regularly, and it still converts at 10 times what the website is. And we're encouraged to do more and invest more. And if you look at the Fin stats that we release publicly, you'll find that Edible Beauty's revenues are growing, its margin is growing, and its cost base is shrinking. And that is because partly because of the Decidr technology that's in it. And we've had great results with some of our partners, with Career One and Elmo, amongst other case studies that we'll release in the future. And these are large enterprise businesses that we're able to deploy. Career One has hundreds of thousands of job seekers and tens of thousands of businesses that interact with this platform every single month. And Harmony, if you go to the next slide. Now, when you think about how are we going to do this, how are we going to capitalize on this opportunity? Well, we have what I believe is a really great dual track strategy to be able to drive revenue for both the near term and the long-term vision of creating the networked economy. The business of today at Decidr, because of our schema and because of our ability to create these agentic apps very quickly that are deterministic, we've gone out to some of the biggest software and SaaS companies in the nation and now globally. And I asked them a couple questions. Is building AI hard? Is building AI expensive? And have you built any AI? And the answer to all three of those questions is yes, yes, no, right? And so we're able to approach those partners and say, well, we will build your AI agents for you for free. We will carry the CapEx cost. We will carry the compute cost or the token cost. And because of our schema, by the way, we're extremely compute efficient. And let's share the revenue out of the agentic app that you sell to your customers. And over a dozen customers have said yes, or partners, excuse me, have said yes. And 5 of those partners are now into commercialization. And we've seen some really encouraging results from some of our partners, getting us to hundreds of thousands of MRR in only a short amount of time. And, for us, that's a really exciting opportunity. Number one, for our partners, it turns them into AI companies very quickly. It entrenches them within their customers. And every SaaS company is under threat because the people in this room, we could vibe code Salesforce together if we wanted to this weekend. And so if the advantage of building software is gone, then the next most valuable thing is distribution. And that's what we're targeting at Decidr. And so by using our partnership or our embedded partnership strategy, it allows us to create a moat with our partners because we become their agentic partner and block out other potentials. They then take our technology into their customers, and we are now becoming entrenched in their customer processes. And that also serves a long-term opportunity for us to create our agentic graph, because every customer that gets a Decidr agentic app through our partners, we pre-board into our network. And sometime in the future, that partner customer will find their agentic business, and their apps will already be in there, and they'll already be installed. And that will fast track them into onboarding into our system. So we believe our partnership strategy is a good one. It's being proven by the commercial results that we're starting to receive. And also it helps the business in driving revenue and offsetting some of the burn that we have in our business. And this is a portfolio strategy. One of the great things about our technology is homogenous. It doesn't matter if it's a beverage company or a job board or any of those companies. As I said before, when you strip away the products and services, 80% is the same. And that allows us to deliver a portfolio play via our partnership deployment. So we think that is a defensible, it's a highly distributed and offers really balanced revenue opportunity and allows us to move at speed while being able to preserve our long-term vision and big vision and blue sky vision of creating this new agentic graph. So Harmony, if you go to the next slide. We have 3 revenue lines in our business. What we call our direct sales business. So these are customers who are in our DecidrOS beta program. And we believe that when a business goes into our beta program, they will consume and activate a certain number of agentic apps. Every time an app runs, that's called an agentic flow. And that agentic flow then earns Decidr money on top of it. And so just like if you're a cloud provider or one of the hyperscalers, every time that you store data or that you use CPU, Amazon or GCP or Azure makes margin on that. Think about that's the pricing model that will exist for Decidr. And as the agentic network grows, as more apps are installed, Decidr allows the app maker to set the margin on that, and we will take a percentage of margin similar to the App Store from that, so typically 30%. Our second revenue pathway is partnerships and syndication. As I mentioned before, that's our embedded partnership model. And every partner is slightly different. But what's really remarkable and allows us to move forward with speed and certainty is the partner already knows what they want to build. They just can't in some cases. And they already know roughly how much customers would pay for it. And so we're able to move with price and certainty into those customers, and we grab 50% of that revenue. And that could be anything from $50 extra a month from a job board in an MRR facility, or in terms of some of our partners like Elmo and others in an ARR ability. So in my experience in doing this in another life, we can expect between a 7% and a 35% net penetration rate amongst our partners' databases. And that will take between 12 and 18 months. So if we think into the future, as we add more partners, we're stacking more revenues that are increasing their velocity, and conversion velocity will increase over time. And lastly, marketplaces, as we announced in a previous update, that Ava agent, which I've talked about at length in Edible Beauty, is also built directly into Shopify. We just received approval from Shopify, an extended approval, which is great, that allows us to look at all historical data within a Shopify account, which is not a typical approval that Shopify gives, but it really enriches the intelligence of our agent in the Shopify marketplace. And what that means is that any of the 5 million businesses that use Shopify can go to the Shopify store, and one toggle, they can turn on their version of our agent. And our proposed pricing that we're just working through is we will charge a nominal fee for that, so a couple dollars a month just to turn it on. But we will take, we're targeting around 50 bips out of every transaction, because you can transact directly inside that agent. So we believe that's also potentially a tremendous opportunity for the business. And just to make a comment too on partnerships area, one of the partnerships that we announced in March was our AWS partnership. And I talked through kind of the process with AWS, of which it's going right on plan, which is great, is we were invited into the Fast Track program at AWS, which is a very rarefied program. They only accept 100 companies every single year out of 100,000 startups that apply. And really what the Fast Track program does is it allows those businesses to be successful inside the AWS universe. AWS also has 5 million customers around the world. Many of those are SMEs. And AWS has a very regimented process in the Fast Track program. We were invited in the program in March and began our onboarding in the April through to June quarter, through to the July through to the September 30th quarter. AWS was supporting us and embedding teams in our organization to help with hyperscaling and technically helping us structure so that we could deal with the potential volume that AWS could come in. And in this particular quarter, we are focusing on developing internal case studies that is aligned with our beta program of the operating system. So there are AWS customers within the beta program, and we're building internal case studies for AWS. The Fast Track program is predominantly an internal program, not an external one, because AWS has so many salespeople internally that the process that they find has the most success is to be able to build internal case studies, to use those case studies to train their sales teams, of which they have their enterprise, their ISV, and their small business sales teams, and then to have those salespeople then go out and meet their customers and recommend Decidr. So we're well into our kind of third phase, which is the internal case study production phase, and that began in October and should probably carry us through to kind of after the Australian holiday period into June and early February, at which then will be deployed internally at Amazon, and we'll start to our go-to-market internally with Amazon. But pleasingly, that kind of continues on track. And we'll endeavor to keep the market informed. And in some of those case studies, we'll be able to use externally, but in other cases, AWS or Amazon may request that those case studies are exclusive within Amazon. So we'll do our best to inform the market and make sure that our shareholders are informed on the progress on that front. Harmony, if you could just move to the next slide, please. And just finishing up, again, you've met Jenny and Adrian. They are tremendous supporters and participants in the board, and you can read their profiles here, but plainly speaking, they're the real deal. And I'm very thankful for them to be on the board. And unlike typical kind of micro caps in AWS, I think that we have a very kind of technological, kind of private venture capital focused board, which I think is incredibly necessary for Decidr, because we're competing against private companies in most cases. I don't believe we have any peers on the SX when it comes to agentic software or agentic manufacturing like we do. So it's really great to have Jenny and Adrian. And Harmony, if you just move to the next slide. Over the last year, we've built out the management and SLT. We still have some roles to go, but principally, we are fully set as a management team. And that is really important because we know we have a plan. We have our dual track strategy of building an agentic graph and our vetted partnership strategy. And we are aggressively and quickly executing that strategy. And I'm asked often what keeps me up at night. And the number one thing is being second when it comes to creating the agentic graph. And we don't want that at Decidr. And so we are moving with speed and purpose to be able to kind of achieve our big goal. Harmony, if you just move to the last slide, which I think is moving to the appendix. But with that, I'll leave that. I'll finish up the AGM presentation. And thank you, everyone, for listening in on a Friday. Hopefully, it was interesting.